Influencers are not who you think they are. We see influencers and we think, oh, they have this amazing, perfect life, and oh, they have all this money, and oh, they're oh so happy. But those things aren't really true. So, if you don't know who I am, I'm Brixenta. I'm a fitness instructor and singer. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And this season of life right now, I'm not teaching regular classes. I'm subbing, and it's just this like wacky season. And my aunt, this is the first holiday season without her, and all of these things. So it's just a wacky season. But if you want to find out the journey of becoming a fitness instructor in a bigger body, my weight loss journey, the playlist, becoming a fitness instructor in a bigger body, or something of the sort, whatever I called it, has all the whole story. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what I called it. So let's talk about influencers. I want to talk about this because, okay, I've been friends with quite a few influencers. One had several million followers. One in particular had several million followers. And I was so surprised by like how we were able to connect and become friends. And it was this like it was almost like I was living in a movie for a while. It was like this weird thing because at that point, I hadn't been putting out content for very long at all, and I don't even think I had 1,000 followers on any platform. So I was super, super, super conscious about when I became friends with this person. I was super conscious about the fact that I didn't have very many followers and he did, and I didn't want him to think I didn't ever want to put him in a position where he felt like I was friends with him because of his following. And I had a huge crush on him, and I didn't want him to feel like I liked him because of his following, or because like I didn't want him to feel uncomfortable or anything. So like I didn't really talk about content creation on my end of things, but we ended up meeting. We live in two different countries, and we ended up meeting in this third country. So purposely, like we were friends, like we were friends at the time, and we were friends with this family of fans, like who they were fans of both of us, but we became friends with them, if that makes any sense, because we had crossover in fans too. And so they were like, hey, why don't you both come out and stay with us, because we love you both. And of course she knew that the wife of the family knew that I had a crush on him, and she wanted to see him because he'd been hurt a lot. So she wanted to see him with somebody who actually cared about him. And you know, I told her all of my concerns. I was like, I don't want him to think that I'm like after him because of his following, because that's not it at all. Because the person that I saw was somebody who was encouraging and who gave out like these positive messages, who was super kind, he was easy to talk to, and that never stopped. That doesn't always mean what you think it does. And if you are on the outside looking at his content, you're like, oh, what a fantastic life he lives. He travels around. He is just this amazing person who puts out these positive messages and just really wants to help people, women especially, and like tells us these things that we wish that other men understood, but they just don't seem to, and he seems to understand it. He's like so down on himself though. Why is he so down on himself? Like, just want to encourage him. And so, like, outside looking in, it looks like he has this amazing life, and he's this amazing, amazing person that you actually want to be friends with. And that's not it at all. And I'm not saying that this is all the influencers, because I'm out here putting out content, and I do it because I care, and I really, really, really want the best for you guys. I started making this series in particular because I knew that I couldn't hold my story back any longer, because it was now hurting you guys if I did. It's not been an easy story to tell, but it's been necessary, and I'm thankful. I'm glad, and most of you guys have been very receptive of it, and I'm so thankful for that. And this part of the story I had held back for a really long time. It's been probably around 5 years, and I had held this part of the story back for a really long time because I am somebody who, I don't want to gossip. I don't like drama, like none of that stuff. And so I wanted to protect his identity. And I'm not going to say who it is. So you can ask me all you want. You're not going to find out. But like, I'm somebody that wants to protect other people and has other people's best interests in mind so much to the point that I lose myself. And the past 15 years I've come through a lot of healing, and I had a lot of trauma to work through, which it's still a process. But I'm at a point now where I'm like, no, like, I'm not going to sit here and gossip about this person. But at the same time, I was so busy protecting him that I didn't tell my story. And I think it's time to tell my story. Like, it needs to get out there, because I think it is going to help you guys just realize, like, their life isn't necessarily better than yours. They're not necessarily happier than you. And some of them might very well be, but that's just not the case with all of them. And a lot of them, actually. And a lot of them are in the drama follows for a reason. And now, putting this caveat in here, there are trolls, no matter who you are. Like, I get them too. But I'm saying, like, those that, like, it's like, why does drama always follow this person around? It seems like there's usually a good reason. It's usually them not. Yeah, anyways, and this was one of those people who, when I was getting to know him, he would tell these stories, but he would leave out key parts. So he looked like a victim, and it was like, and he would leave out key parts. So he looked like the victim, and he would leave out key parts when he was to blame. Like, he would sometimes occasionally take accountability for things, or seemingly take accountability for things. But he did it enough so that it looked like he had changed his life, but hadn't really. So at first, I believed that, like, he had really gone through all these changes, had learned, had gone through a lot of healing, had done all these things to work on himself, and he was a different person than he was. And so the stories, most of the time, they were told in past tense, and they probably were in past tense, but he was still that person, and that didn't show up until much, much later after meeting him. And so this guy who, like, I thought this was this amazing guy who he was so encouraging. He wanted to help people. He was putting out content. So when we talked, we could understand on that level, because so many times, like, I love my friends, don't get me wrong, but they don't always understand what it's like putting out content, and because it's just a different world. And like, it was just nice to have somebody who understood, especially 5 years ago, whatever, because it wasn't nearly as much as it is now too. And even now, like, if you're putting it out seriously, it's different. Anyways, it was a whole different thing. So being friends with somebody who is also creating content and putting it out there and doing this thing all the time, it was really nice to have somebody that actually understood and wasn't just, like, listening and nodding, but, like, actually understood what I was talking about. And when we were together, like I said, like, we got along really well. Like, it was easy to, we had an easy time conversing. He was easy to talk to. And there were just things when we met, though, because we met in another country. Like I said, we live in 2 different countries, and then we met in a 3rd country. And when we met, we spent about almost a month together, and there were things that would pop up that I was kind of like, huh? But it didn't really seem like red flags at that point, because I still believed that that's who he was. However, I was starting to see that he hadn't come as far as he led us to believe. And, like, the family of family of fans that we became friends with, they're also usually pretty good about, like, spotting the BS and finding people who are quality people. So, and he fooled them too. until he didn't. So it was just like this whole crazy thing. And I thought that he genuinely cared, and maybe he cared as much as he could. I don't know, but he definitely didn't have the capacity. I thought it was weird that one of his other influencer friends who also had a big following, it's not like he was on a different level or anything, contacted him, and he like messaged him, he like contacted him back, but like didn't really want to talk to him, and like complained about having to talk to him. And he complained about these other influencers who had said something bad about him. It wasn't even that bad, and it was years ago. And he had like, it was just like, there were just so many weird things. And then he would constantly ask like how I was doing. But like a couple of the conversations, one of them, he asked me a question that was like kind of a heavy answer. So it was like late at night, we were gonna go to bed. So like he took it as I didn't wanna respond. But I did want to answer him, and so the next day I like tried to apologize and whatever, and he kind of like shrugged me off and wrote it off. And I thought that was weird, but I thought that maybe he just thought that I felt obligated to talk to him. Like, I kept making excuses until I saw the real person. And like, there's part of me that is so frustrated with that, and then there's part of me that's like, no, I love the fact that I give people a chance, and I love that about myself, and I'm not going to change that. But it was really hard. It was definitely really hard when I found out who he really was to come to terms with it. And the one time that it was kind of, there was two really big times, but one of them was, he asked me a question, and I answered him, and I started crying, and I was standing in the kitchen, and he left me standing in the kitchen alone crying. And I didn't even finish saying what I was saying. And that right there was so confusing. I was so confused, because I didn't really fully understand who he was then. I still was under the impression that he was a good guy. So I was very, very confused, and I didn't understand why. And I was like, maybe he just didn't understand that I don't know. Like, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And of course then I felt stupid because I was standing in the kitchen crying, talking to myself, and it was like, and so our other friends come in, and I talked to the woman, and so I like continued the story where I left off, because I was like in the middle of the kitchen crying, and like of course like she was comforting, but I was just like I didn't tell her what happened because I felt stupid. Now I kind of wish that I had, because I just feel like I would have felt better about it if I had like actually been willing to talk about it, instead of protecting him. And then the day that I left, I was gonna fly out early the next morning, and we were all gonna do stuff together. We had plans. But instead, I spent almost my entire last day crying my eyes out because of him. It was just one of those things where like there's a lot that goes into it, but like it was a horrible, horrible day, and it made my last day there really awful. And like I take responsibility that like the fact that I was sitting there and I couldn't do anything other than like be emotional, I take responsibility for that. So I'm not like blaming him for that by any means. That's my own responsibility. But what happened and why I was that emotional was his fault for sure. And because I'm an understanding person and I didn't really see who he was at the time, we apologized, made up, and moved on. That was that. And there was one day I had spent some time with him, and I told him that I liked him, and I think I was supposed to leave the next day at that point, but then I ended up staying another week. And he didn't like me as more than a friend. That was totally fine. But then there were some other things that happened that were weird, that it was just like, is that really true? And like, unless you're willing to have a conversation, I'm not willing to like do anything about this. So it was just like a whole weird thing. And then I came back to the States, and he was there for a few more weeks, And when I got back to the States, I was going to be visiting his country. I had already had this plan before we even were friends, but I was going to be visiting his, because I really, really, really love the country, and I was going to be visiting his country, and I had, at that point, I had felt like he didn't actually like not even like as a friend, like me, even though like the day before I left, like he held my hand and like gave me a big hug, and like we were still like speaking to her, like still very much friends. Like there was a couple of times where I was like, I don't think he even likes me at all, like as a person even. But then like he would like do something and like we would have a conversation, him not having a clue that I felt this way, but like have a conversation that made me feel differently. But then things started to go downhill. He'd made some really, really bad decisions while he was there after I left. And I felt like he was holding back while I was there, and I couldn't figure out why. And there was another time where we had some crossover in fans, and I had tried to do a live stream, and he wouldn't join. And I thought that was weird because it was a celebration of a milestone. And I thought it was really weird that he wouldn't join. But like he was not supportive at all. But like he did enough to make it look like he was supportive, and like we had did a couple live streams together. The first one was super awkward, and I felt like he didn't actually want me there, even though like he was the one, it was his idea, it was his, like I said, like I never wanted to make him feel uncomfortable, so I never suggested it. I never suggested doing videos together. We did those too. And so because like it was his idea to do these things, I thought, okay, he does like care about me as a person, as a friend. Like he keeps asking me how I'm doing, like all of the things that like make friends. I'm like, that's where we're at. But like, it just wasn't. It just wasn't. And I know this is all over the place, but hopefully this is helping you understand like influencers aren't always who they say they are, and they can appear to be this really nice person and this encouraging person, but they may not be. And they can appear to have the happiest life ever, but they may not. Him in particular, he had brands that wouldn't work with him anymore. And it's because he was inconsistent and flaky. He wouldn't do what he wouldn't follow through a lot of times, unless it was a one-off thing. He wouldn't follow through. And everything was so confusing of like why he wasn't, with the following that he had, why he wasn't more financially successful, and why he wasn't where he really wanted to be in life, and all these things. But then finding out like later who he really was, it all made sense. And all this drama with fans like seemed to follow him, and that did make sense at the time, and then later it did. And once I got back to my country and he was still there, he had made some really bad choices, and like really, really, really bad, to the point of they almost kicked him out. And before that happened though, I'd told her, I was like, I felt like he was holding back and wasn't really showing who he was when I was there. And she's like, yeah, he said like after I left that he could finally be himself. And I was like, I don't understand. If we're both like putting out like encouraging content, and like what does he think I'm gonna do? Like I don't really understand. Like why won't he show himself around me? But then once I found out who he was, I understood. So when I got back home, a little while after this back and forth, like thinking like I did something wrong and he didn't like me or whatever, he had went back to his country, and so we're all in our own countries now. And apparently he was talking about doing a meet and greet, and I was going over there. So like I said, I planned this before we were even friends, before we even knew each other. I had planned to go there, and so I was going to do a meet and greet when I got there. And our friend in the other country, she was like, oh, well, he's planning on doing a meet and greet. I think he wants you guys to do a meet and greet together. So I talked to him about it, and he said he didn't really do meet and greets with people. I have no problem with that. That's fine. Not a big deal. However, what was a big deal was I invited him to come anyway. Like, I'm like, you don't have to do the meet and greet, but you can come if you want. And like I said, we had crossover in fans because, we were both putting out encouraging content, and so there was some crossover in fans. And when I invited him as a friend to come support another friend, his response to me was, it depends who's coming. Who of our fans are going to be there? No. It does not work that way. If you don't want to do meet and greets together, you don't get to do meet and greets together. Like, if you want to be there for me, that's fine. But if you don't want to do a meet and greet together, you don't get to be there for you. You get to be there for me. And so I was livid. And that was the first point where there was some things, but like that was the first big one where I was like, I don't even like this guy. Or not, no, that's not true. I still liked him at the time, but that cured my crush for sure at that point, because like I was starting to see who he was, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess we're not in the same spot, and I don't actually want to be with him, but I still had a crush on him. But that moment was like, okay, it's over. That cured it for me right there, because I was more seeing who he was. And then shortly after that, some really bad things went down. He destroyed friendships with myself and that family and a lot of his followers, and it was racist and political, and he was drunk, and it was all sorts of horrible things. And I won't talk about what exactly went conspired, but it was bad. It was really bad. And we had a long conversation, and by the time I got to his country, it was awkward between us, but I was like, I think our friendship is over. But I told him that I would still be there for him as a friend if he wanted me to, and I'm a person, I keep my word, so I was like, I will be, but I think our friendship is over, because things were bad. And what he told me at the end of our conversation, he's like, this stays between the two of us because this is a private matter. And that crushed me, because I am somebody who I very much like don't ever say anything about anybody. And so like the fact that he said that to me, it was like, you really don't know me at all, and you didn't care to either. And it was just a moment where it was just like I was crushed. And like, because like, even though I didn't have a crush on him anymore, like when I'm friends with somebody, I am all in, and I like give and give and give. And so when something goes down, like it impacts me big time. So the moment where I was like, he really doesn't know me at all, it was soul crushing. And that was the moment that I was like, we're not friends anymore, but I'm gonna still be a person of my word. And I was like, I'm not reaching out to him anymore, but if he reaches out to me, then I'm not going to turn him away. But when I got to his country, he asked me how my flight was and all that stuff. And I don't remember. We talked a couple of times. He never ended up meeting with me. There was somebody who I feared for my life. This fan in particular that was a fan of both of ours. I don't know. There was something about it that I didn't trust, and they were going to be in the same country. And I told him not to tell this person where I was going to be, anything about my whereabouts. And he said, yeah, I don't trust them either, blah, blah, blah. It was like this conspiracy. I don't know. It was weird. Like, from his end, it was weird. And then I left and came back home. And when that person was there, he did this big, huge surprise and, like, made us ordeal about it and all this stuff. And I'm just like, the only thing he wants anybody for is so that he can get more attention. Like, beyond that, he doesn't care about anybody. He only cares about himself and getting the attention. That's why he makes the videos. That's why he tells people what they want to hear. That's why he manipulates people. He's so manipulative, and he only tells people what they want to hear. And like, he does not actually care about you. He does not have your interest in mind at all. Like, not even, forget your best interest. He has no interest in yours in mind at all. It's all about him and what he can get out of it. And anytime he makes videos, does live streams, shares, it's to make himself look good. And that's like all it's centered around. And he doesn't have the capacity to understand that that's not normal. He just thinks that that's how everybody operates. And he's actually really miserable, like, which is the whole reason, like, the drunkenness would happen. and this was like 5 years ago. So like, and this experience was so hard to recover from, because when like I said, when I care so hard. And so it took a while to like really get over it. And any of you who came over from Dr. Mike's content, I appreciate you so much. And I thank you so much, because like, let me go back. So when I had to rebrand because of what happened, because his followers were the ones that had come over from his content, the crossover. The ones that came over from my content are still amazing. And I hope they're not still following him. But the ones that came over from his content all brought in this massive drama. And I'm not talking about like these just trolls that hit here and there. I am talking drama, to the point where I was so stressed out that I like stopped live streaming, and I ended up rebranding, because I was, but like the whole thing is like, I needed to. It was so stressful that I didn't want to do it again, but I needed to, because I was like, I don't understand. I am not a drama person. Like, I don't understand why all this drama come over here, why they feel comfortable with this. And then I was like, you know what? Like, if they're here, that means they feel comfortable bringing the drama here. Why do they feel comfortable with it? What is it that I'm doing that I need to change that is making them feel comfortable bringing this drama over here? And that's when I realized all I was doing was putting out a feel-good message. I wasn't really putting out the hard truths. And like, I was putting out truths, but I did it in a way that it was just encouraging. Only the encouragement, not the hard stuff. And so once I started putting both sides of that out there, that's when all of his followers that were bringing drama unfollowed me, thankfully. Which was another thing. I had some tough decisions to make, because I knew that I was going to lose a lot of followers doing that. And I did. And it was mostly the people who I thought I would. And then there were some that stuck around, there was a couple that stuck around. I was surprised, and then there was a couple that stuck around that I wasn't surprised. But, that was such a stressful situation. I did not want to go through that again. And then a few months ago, I made a story thanking Dr. Mike, which, okay, let me back that up. I'm going to make like a good story about this whole thing. But when I found Dr. Mike's content, it was shortly after everything went down with this man that was an influencer that I just spoke about. And so it didn't take me very long before I was like, Dr. Mike, I don't like him. He's just like this guy. I feel horrible, because I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I thought that and that's the thing, like, that drives me crazy when people judge people based off of other people and other experiences that they've had. And I did it, and I was like, oh my gosh. So rediscovering his content a few months ago, I was like, this guy again, man. And I was like, why don't I like him again? And I was like, let me watch his content. And I was like, oh yeah, because he's like this guy. And I'm like, you know what? I don't actually know that. And he seems to be consistently putting out content and consistently putting out helpful content that seems to truly want to help people. So and I watched it hesitantly for a while. And then there came a point where he did this podcast and like wanted to have like real conversations and like actually talk things out and like not about drama. And it was just like, oh, wait, actually, like, you're here about communication? Like, you want that? And you don't want... Okay, fine, I'm in. So then I made a thank you video, like, because the medical journey, like, we've talked about this before. If you haven't seen the previous videos, it's being in the fitness industry in a bigger body playlist. So I had a pretty rough medical journey. So when I found his content and found out that we had read some of the same books, we have similar mindsets of whole body care, whole person care, and not just like picking and choosing and not just pushing medicine. I was like, wait, you mean there's doctors out there that might actually listen to me? It's time to heal this journey. Okay. And then from there, like, things dominoed, and I now work with a hospital, and it's kind of crazy. But when I sent that thank you video, he reposted it, and some of you came from that video, and I appreciate you so much, first of all, but I was not happy about it because of everything I just said. I was like, I cannot go through this again. So when people started following me and then people started coming into my DMs, I was like, oh no. I ended up like walking away, and I was like, I cannot do this again. But you guys have been so kind. Most of you, there's been a few weird ones. They unfollowed me pretty fast. But like, you guys have been so kind, and you guys have actually like been so engaged and cared so much about what I'm putting out there, and like actually learning, and like it's so exciting to connect with people who actually want to learn. And so like I'm like so happy that I realized once I rediscovered the content that that's what I did. I compared him to him because of what I went through, and because that was so fresh. And I'm glad that I gave him another chance, because like it literally changed my life, which again, I'll get into a deeper dive on all that later. But like, that it speaks volumes of his character. But like, not all influencers are who they say they are online, and you just don't know until you meet them and talk to them. And some of them aren't happy like they present, and it's just, I don't know. I hadn't told this story because I wanted to protect people's identities so much, and I'm still not speaking on their identity. However, I needed to get this story out because, one, I needed to talk about it, because I really, like, I have a couple of friends that I've talked about it with, really good friends, and that's it. But this was like such a huge part of my life, and I haven't talked about it. And I was like, you know what? It's time to talk about this. And it just, I don't know. Anyways, and I did it too in hopes that, I hope my microphone is still plugged in hopes that I'm going to have to do a voiceover if it's not. Hopes that you guys get value out of this by understanding, like, you have to be careful who you like really connect with, that are influencers, because unless you meet them and are really friends with them, like, it's a one-sided relationship and you don't really know who they are. But that's not to say, like, I think coming across influencers with skepticism is healthy, but like being pessimistic about it is not so healthy. So as Dr. Mike would say, be alert, not anxious. But anyways, I love you. Dream big, take action. Bye!